Hello everyone. Today we are going to discuss about the second chapter from economy, class 10th, the sector of the Indian economy. So dear student, let us continue the chapter. So all of you listen very carefully. Okay, so first of all we discuss about the economic activity and non-economic activity that we learn in class 9th. Economic activity and non-economic activity. Economic activity, that means such activity which added value to the national income either in the GDP. Okay, but non-economic activities, it does not added any value to the national income. So under the economic activity, we classified the economic activity into a different categories, either into a different sector. So this sector we are going to learn about it. Okay, so what are this sector and what are the importance and the characteristics of this sector? So first of all, dear student, we classify the economic activity on the basis of the nature of the activity, on the basis of the nature of the activity. On the basis of the nature of the activity, we classified the economic activity into two categories. First is, three categories: primary, secondary, and third is tertiary, and also there is a quaternary and quinary. But in class 10th we learn about the only primary, secondary and tertiary. And second, on the basis of the condition of employment, okay, it classified into two categories. First is organized sector and second is unorganized sector. Okay, and third, on the basis of the ownership, economic activity classified into two categories. Okay, so first is public, that means government, and second is private. So dear student, listen. Okay, on the basis of the nature of the activity, we classified the economic activity into three categories: primary, secondary and tertiary. Okay, and on the basis of the condition of employment, either working condition, we classified the economic activity into two categories: organized and unorganized. And on the basis of the ownership, we classified into two categories: public and private. Clear all of you? So next we discuss about the primary, secondary and tertiary sector, either primary, secondary and tertiary activity. Okay, so dear student, so first of all we see the definition of primary sector. Okay, so subject, primary, secondary and third tertiary. So first of all we discuss about the primary sector. Okay, so what is primary activity and what is primary sector? So first of all is definition. First of all, definition. So exploitation of the things or the resource from the nature is known as the primary activity. Exploitation, either you can say that the extraction of resource from the nature is called the primary activities. Okay. Exploitation of resource from the nature, okay, is known as the primary activity. So which are the primary activities? Okay, second we see the example. Okay, so in example, mining, agriculture, either cultivation, forestry, fishing, animal husbandry, etc. Okay. Next we see that the why also known. So primary sector also known as agriculture and related sector. Why? Because most of the product we get from the agriculture. That's why this sector is known as the agriculture and related sector. Agriculture and related sector. Okay, and also it's called primary. It's called so primary because it provide base for all product that we subsequently make. Okay, that we subsequently make. And the fourth is employment. So how much people engaged in primary sector as the primary activities? 49% people. 49% people. Otherwise you can say that the half of the country's people are engaged in primary activity at the primary sector. Half of the country's people, 49% people. Okay, so next is GDP. How much GDP share by the primary sector? About 18% GDP. About 18% GDP share by the primary sector. And sixth point is depends. Okay, it depends on climate and land, otherwise on the secondary and tertiary. Okay, and also primary provide the raw material to the secondary sector. That means agro-based industries are depends on the primary activity. So dear student, see the all points. First of all, what is primary activity? Okay, exploitation or the extraction of the resources from the nature. Some example is farming, mining, forestry, fishing, poultry farming, animal husbandry, etc. Okay, also known as agriculture and related sector. Why? Because most of the product we get from the agriculture. And employ, how much people engaged in primary sector? 49% people. Otherwise you can say that the half of the country's people engaged in primary activity. GDP, how much GDP share by? 18% GDP share by the primary sector towards the country's economy. And also the primary activities the sector depends on mainly climate and land. Either it closely related to the climate and land, and also it depends on the secondary sector and tertiary sector. So dear student, next we see the definition of the secondary sector. What is secondary sector? Change the form of raw material in the way of manufacturing. Change the form of raw materials in the way of manufacturing. In the way of manufacturing, change the form of raw material in the way of manufacturing. So its example as a so many industries like cotton textile, jute, sugar, okay, cotton, jute, textile, sugar, iron and steel, fertilizers. So many industries are come under the secondary sector. That's mean altogether we can say that the manufacturing industries are comes under the secondary sector. And next, also known as secondary sector, also known as industrial sector. Secondary sector also known as industrial sector. Industrial sector. Why it is known as industrial sectors? Okay, because it associated with the different kinds of industries. It associated with the different kinds of industries. It associated with different kinds of industries that came up. Okay, next, employ. How much people are engaged? Okay, how much people? 27% people, sorry, 24% people are engaged in secondary activity. 24% people are engaged in secondary activity. Okay, it share the 29% GDP towards the country's economy. 29% GDP towards the country's economy, and it depends on the primary and secondary, sorry, and tertiary sector. That's mean secondary sector depends on the primary sector and also tertiary sector support the secondary sector. That's mean secondary sector also depends on the tertiary sector. So next we see the tertiary sector. So what is tertiary sector? So all of you remember, primary sector and secondary sector both are produce the goods, but tertiary sector never produce the goods. It generate only services, and only generate services, not goods. So tertiary sector, it does not produce goods, it only generate services. Okay, it only generate services. Which are the comes under the secondary sector? Transport, banking, administrative, okay, insurance, police station, that means security, education, healthcare. These are comes under the tertiary. So see, education, healthcare, transport, banking, okay, trade, insurance, administrative, etc. are comes under the tertiary sector. Okay, and next, also known as the tertiary sector, also known as service sector. So dear student, never think it provide the job, that's why it's called the service sector. So primary sector also provide the job to the people, secondary sector also provide job to the people, and tertiary sector also provide job to the people. But why it is known as the service sector? Because it generate services rather than the goods. It generate services rather than the goods. That's why it is known as the service sector. That's why it is known as the service sector. Okay, so how much people are employed in tertiary sector? 27% people. How much? 27% people are engaged in tertiary sector. And next we see the GDP. How much GDP? 53% GDP. How much? 53% GDP share by the tertiary sector towards the Indian economy. That is very much. Okay, then the primary and secondary. The primary only 18%, secondary 29%, but tertiary sector only 53%. Next, tertiary sector support the primary and secondary sector. Tertiary sector support the primary and secondary sector, and their development also helps to the develop of the tertiary sector. Okay, and their development helps to develop of the tertiary sector. So I think all of you understand what is primary, secondary and tertiary sector. Okay, so next we discuss about the some points. First of all, what is final goods, what is intermediate goods, and what is raw material, and what is GDP, and who calculate the GDP. Okay, so first of all, what is final goods? Final goods means which are ready to sell into the market, either which is ready to consume, either use it. That good, either such goods are known as the, either such services are known as the final goods. What is the term? First term is final goods. Okay, so final goods are such goods which are ready to sell into the market, either ready to use by the consumer, to consume it, either to use it. So such goods are referred as the final goods. And so our second point is intermediate good. Intermediate goods. That means intermediate goods are such goods which used to produce the final goods. Okay, so I give you example. Okay, so if you produce the biscuits, so biscuit is a final goods, so we require the wheat flour. So wheat flour produced from the wheat. So wheat is a raw material. So wheat is a raw material. Then we convert into a wheat flour, that is intermediate goods, and then we make a biscuits. So it is a final goods. Understood? So wheat is a raw material, intermediate goods, and it is a final goods. Okay, clear all of you? So next we see the GDP. So what is GDP? The full form of the GDP is gross domestic product. Okay, third is GDP. Full form is gross domestic product. Okay, so the market value of all final goods, the market value of all final goods and services produced by the three sectors, primary, secondary and tertiary, within a country throughout the year is called the GDP. I repeat this one again. The value of all final goods, okay, and services that produced by the each sector, either produced by the three sectors within a country throughout the year, is called the GDP. So who calculate that? So first of the, in GDP, all of you must remember the value of all final goods and services. Final goods and services produced by three sectors within a country throughout the year. Understood all of you? So who calculate the gross domestic product? Government of ministry. Okay, with the help of the various department. Central government of ministry calculate the GDP with the help of the various department. Who calculate? Central government ministry with the help of the various department. Okay, so all of you understood?